We need to have a very serious, very direct, and completely honest conversation about what the Indiana Fever's game against the Connecticut Sun revealed.
And this is going to be the balance for the Sun team, because you look at the pieces, they have very good defenders, and they're going to want to do their best to create some turnovers here.
Clark, quickly, you can count it.
Saw through the unrivaled season, and now it's a huge part of what Indiana can bring offensively.
Clark likes to shoot going left and does.
Up the game a little bit more with the fast pace and transition looks that the Fever want to get.
Clark, long range, got it.
Caitlin Clark is cold, coming to her left once again. Smooth.
Because the win is in the record column, and the final score of 85-75 will be recorded as another Indiana victory. But the manner in which this game was played, the offensive system deployed, the entertainment value that was conspicuously absent, and the specific evidence the game provided about what this coaching staff prioritizes tells a story that no victory margin can neutralize or silence. Let us start with the motion offense, because it is the central, defining, and analytically significant issue of this game. The motion offense was deployed again by Stephanie White against the Connecticut Sun, and the observation being made by observers who watch this game carefully is not subtle or ambiguous or based on selective interpretation. This offensive system appears specifically and deliberately designed to create opportunities for Kelsey Mitchell, rather than to maximize what Caitlin Clark generates when she has the ball and the freedom to operate as the primary creative engine of this team's attack. That is a pointed, analytical claim, but the evidence that supports it is in the box score, the shot distribution, and the competitive reality of what the game actually produced. The motion offense involves extensive passing rotations, the ball moving from player to player, with Clark functioning as a piece within the system rather than as the primary initiating force who makes decisions from a position of creative authority. The offense passes, it rotates, it moves the ball through multiple hands. And then it concludes in shot opportunities that frequently emerge for players other than Clark through the designed flow of the action. That is the system. And the specific player whose opportunities it consistently produces, the player the shot distribution most reliably serves, is Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell shot 2 of 9 from three-point range in this game. 2 of 9. 33% efficiency from the perimeter. And yet she finished with 19 points on the underlying volume the system routes to her. The analytical portrait that 2 of 9 from 3 represents is straightforward. A player receiving significant designed offensive opportunity through a system specifically organized to create her looks, converting those looks at well below acceptable efficiency rates, and still accumulating points through volume rather than precision. That is what the motion offense produces from Mitchell when her shot is not falling. And it produces it at the cost of possessions that could have gone to the player shooting 50% from 3 in the same game. Clark shot 5 of 10 from three-point range in this game, 50% from Caitlin Clark. In a game where the motion offense was not designed to optimize her output and was not routing possessions through her as the primary creative option. She finished with 25 points on 10 of 17 from the field overall, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, a plus-minus of plus 15, 36 minutes. Let us sit with that plus-minus number, because it is the most precise and most revealing single statistic this game produced. Plus 15. When Clark is on the floor, this Indiana Fever team is 15 points per 40 minutes better than when she is not. That number exists within a motion offensive system that routes possessions around her and through other players rather than building the attack around her decision-making. That number is produced by a player operating within systemic constraints that limit rather than amplify her output. The competitive question that number raises is not subtle. What does that number look like in a system that is actually built to put the ball in Clark's hands and let her operate with the primary creative authority that her talent level demands and that the plus 15 confirms she maximizes when she gets to exercise it? The gap between what the plus 15 produces in a constrained system And what Clark would produce in an optimized system is the gap between what this Indiana Fever team currently is and what the documented evidence of this season has consistently shown it could be if the coaching decisions reflected the analytical reality of where this team's competitive ceiling actually resides. Now let us address the broader game picture with the honesty the competitive results demand. Indiana shot 49% from the field overall and 41% from three as a team. Those are functional numbers that, combined with individual contributions from Billings and Clark, produced a 10-point victory against a Connecticut team that the Fever's talent level should handle in most competitive encounters. But 19 turnovers against the Connecticut Sun's 9 represents a possession efficiency deficit of 10 turnovers in the Sun's favor, a competitive advantage on the possession dimension that Indiana was required to overcome through superior shooting rather than through superior competitive discipline. A team with Indiana's talent should not be losing the turnover battle by 10 in a game against this specific opponent. The 19 turnovers are a preparation and execution accountability item that belongs in the full accounting of this game's competitive reality. Monique Billings delivered a genuinely strong individual performance. 10 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 60% from the field, 4 for 4 from the free throw line, 27 minutes, plus-minus of plus 18. The plus 18 from Billings is an outstanding individual impact measurement for a player receiving that volume of minutes in a competitive game. Against the Connecticut Sun specifically, this level of interior efficiency represents exactly the kind of contribution that Indiana has needed from its front court depth throughout this season. Billings produced it in this game, and that production was a real and meaningful contributor to the comfortable final margin. The defensive rebounding situation raised its own concerns in this game. Indiana surrendered 26 offensive rebounds to the Connecticut Sun. 26. Offensive rebounding represents extended possession opportunities, second and third chances that defensive failures allow opponents to generate. Giving up 26 offensive boards is a structural vulnerability that directly affects competitive outcomes in games where the margin is tighter and the opponent's offensive execution is more dangerous. The defensive rebounding total reflects recurring positioning and boxing out failures that the coaching staff has not resolved through scheme installation or individual accountability across this season. Sophie Cunningham's return from the questionable elbow designation is worth acknowledging both on its competitive merits and in the broader organizational context. She came back and produced 11 points for Indiana. The production itself was a positive competitive contribution. Cunningham returning, getting 11 points, and contributing to the team's offensive depth is unambiguously good for Indiana's competitive picture. The speed of her return from the injury designation has generated observations in the analytical community about the timing context of that designation relative to the Instagram situation. And those observations are part of the documented record that observers continue to evaluate as new information emerges. The officiating dimension of this game generated pointed commentary from multiple people watching. The pattern being observed, that contact around Clark is consistently treated with lower sensitivity to whistles than comparable contact situations elsewhere on the floor, reflects a documented season-long concern that the full film review of this game will either confirm or complicate. The 13 free throws Indiana shot as a team versus Connecticut's 19 tell part of this competitive story, though the specific individual assignments require complete film examination to assess with analytical precision. Now let us return to the motion offense and address the most significant analytical question this game raises, because it is the question that the full arc of this season has been building toward with increasing specificity and increasing urgency. 2 games ago, Clark and Aaliyah Boston ran the 2-man pick-and-roll game and produced the first 30-point double-double partnership in the history of the WNBA. That is a verified historical achievement. The analytical community was unified in identifying the Clark-Boston 2-man game as the most efficient and most devastating offensive action this team possesses. The evidence was comprehensive and undeniable. Historic individual output, combined with the competitive reality that this specific action creates defensive problems that the motion offense simply does not generate with anything approaching comparable efficiency. In the very next game against Connecticut, the motion offense was the primary organizational framework. Let that specific sequencing be examined with full analytical honesty. The coaching staff observed the Clark-Boston two-man action produce a historic result. They had complete and direct access to the analytical evidence that the action represents the team's highest efficiency offensive option. And in the next game, the motion offense returned as the designed offensive system. The question that raises, the analytical question that demands an answer in the context of everything this season has documented, is direct and unavoidable. What is the coaching rationale for returning to an offensive system that has been analytically identified as inferior to the alternative immediately after the alternative produced the most historically significant performance of the season? The answer that the full documented evidence of this entire season consistently points toward is one that is uncomfortable but analytically supported. The motion offense is not the primary offensive system because it produces the best competitive results for Indiana. It is the primary offensive system because it produces designed opportunities for Kelsey Mitchell within an organizational offensive priority structure that the evidence of this season has consistently reflected. And those designed opportunities for Mitchell come at the cost of the possessions that would go to Clark within a system organized around her capabilities. Mitchell shooting 2 of 9 from 3, while the system is specifically routing her looks, is the competitive output of that prioritization choice. Clark shooting 5 of 10 from 3, while operating within a system not designed to maximize her perimeter opportunities, is the competitive output of what she produces despite the constrained deployment. The gap between those two shooting lines, in a system that appears designed to prioritize one player over the other, is the analytical evidence that this game added to the season-long record. The entertainment value observation requires specific acknowledgement because it is not merely a fan preference complaint. It is a commercially significant concern that the attendance figures, the viewership data, and the secondary market pricing have been quantifying throughout this season. The motion offense is boring. It is a passing-heavy, rotation-dependent system that produces neither the creative individual moments nor the dynamic collective action that made the Indiana Fever a nationally compelling product. The pass-pass-pass aesthetic of the motion offense is the basketball equivalent of watching an organization methodically manage a lead it does not have, at a pace that invites viewer disengagement. The fans who found this game against Connecticut boring are not being unreasonable about the product they observed. This matters commercially because the Indiana Fever's value as an entertainment product is inseparable from what Clark generates when she operates as the primary creative force. The sold-out arenas, the premium secondary market pricing, the national broadcast viewership that elevated this franchise's commercial standing, all of it was produced by Clark operating in a system that amplified her creativity. The motion offense that routes possessions through other players is not that system. And the commercial data, the declining attendance figures, the half-empty arenas, the viewership trends, reflects the audience's honest assessment of the product difference between Clark operating at full creative authority and Clark operating as a component within someone else's organizational scheme. Clark's 25 points and plus 15 in this game, produced within the motion offense framework, represent the extraordinary competitive output of an extraordinary individual talent overcoming systemic constraints. But extraordinary individual talent overcoming systemic constraints is not the sustainable competitive model for a franchise whose ambitions extend beyond surviving individual games. It is the model for a franchise that continues to win enough to stay competitive while never reaching the ceiling that its best players' capabilities make genuinely reachable. The Connecticut Sun are not the measuring stick against which this team's potential should be evaluated. A 10-point victory over Connecticut with 19 turnovers and the motion offense deployed in place of the Clark-Boston action that just made WNBA history is not the competitive expression of a team building toward meaningful postseason impact. It is the result of individual excellence overcoming organizational competitive inefficiency to produce a winning margin against an opponent the talent should handle more cleanly. Indiana won. Clark produced 25 and a plus 15. Billings delivered a plus 18 double-double. The final margin was 10, and the motion offense was back. The analytical story those facts tell together is the analytical story this entire season has been building across every game and every competitive measurement available. Clark is producing MVP caliber output in a system not designed to maximize what she does. The team wins when the individual excellence is sufficient to compensate for the organizational inefficiency. The offensive system returns to the framework that prioritizes other players' opportunities over the historically supported, analytically verified conclusion that putting the ball in Clark's hands and letting her operate produces the best competitive results this team generates. The win is in the record. The motion offense is in the record. The plus 15 is in the record. And the gap between what this team is and what it would be with a coaching approach that actually reflects the analytical reality of where Caitlin Clark belongs within this offense is the most important and the most persistently documented gap in women's professional basketball right now.